and then we got the last shot, and then people closed in on us, and it was a very weird experience. We were hugging and saying goodbye, and there were tears and stuff, and there's all these people. What's it feel like? What are you going to do next? And what's it like? Tell me about this.
When Alan Alda told CBS he wanted to end MASH, the network offered him anything to stay. More money, creative control, even a shorter season. But Alda knew something the executives didn't. From mysterious collapses on set to hidden tensions that forced emergency meetings, this is the untold story of why television's most successful series chose to say goodbye at its peak. The story of how MASH became a TV show is full of surprises. It all started with a book called MASH, a novel about 3 Army doctors. The book was written by Dr. H. Richard Hornberger, who used the pen name Richard Hooker. It was based on his real experiences as a doctor during the Korean War and came out in 1968. Later, in 1970, the book was turned into a movie directed by Robert Altman. The movie was a big hit, making over $81 million on a budget of just $3.25 million. This success got the attention of TV executives at 20th Century Fox. At first, they wanted to make a sequel movie, MASH Goes to Maine. But when that idea didn't work out, they decided to turn it into a TV series instead. The job of creating the TV show was given to Gene Reynolds. His first obstacle was to find the right writer to help bring the show to life. He asked Ring Lardner Jr., who had written the MASH movie. But Lardner said no because he wanted to keep working on films. This could have stopped the project, but instead, it led to a better opportunity. Reynolds thought of an old friend, Larry Gelbart. Gelbart was a comedy writer from Chicago who had written for big names like Bob Hope and Danny Thomas. He had also worked on a popular TV show called Caesar's Hour. But Gelbart had been living in London for years and hadn't worked in American TV for a long time. Reynolds called him in May 1971 to pitch the idea. Gelbart wasn't sure at first, but the idea grew on him. He came to Los Angeles in June to meet Reynolds. Together, they decided that the show should mix comedy and serious moments in a way that hadn't been done before. Gelbart later said, "It was a chance to write about war in a way that made people laugh and think at the same time." Next, they had to find the perfect cast. This started in July 1971. The first big decision was casting Hawkeye Pierce, the main character. Alan Alda wasn't the studio's first choice, and he wasn't sure he wanted to do it. But after meeting with Reynolds and Gelbart, he decided to take the role because they told him the show would be more than just funny. It would have something meaningful to say about war and life. Wayne Rogers joined as Trapper John, Hawkeye's partner, bringing his own charm to the role. Loretta Swit was cast as Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan, showing both toughness and vulnerability. One of the most interesting choices was Gary Berghoff, who played Radar O'Reilly. He was the only actor from the movie who also joined the TV series. His character became a fan favorite because he showed a sweet, innocent side in the middle of a war. The cast started working together, and the pilot episode was filmed soon after. It went live on September 17, 1972, but it almost didn't survive its first season. The ratings were terrible, and it was near the bottom of all TV shows. Even the cast thought it would be canceled. Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye Pierce, said they only stayed on air because CBS believed in the show, despite the bad numbers. The show was different from what people were used to. It was about doctors during the Korean War, and mixed funny moments with serious ones. Many viewers didn't know how to feel about it. They wanted simple laughs, but MASH made them think. On top of that, it aired at the same time as The Wonderful World of Disney, a very popular show. This made it hard for MASH to find an audience. But then, it was saved by luck. The wife of the CBS boss loved the show and begged her husband not to cancel it. Then reruns aired during the summer. People who missed it before gave it another chance. They started to see how special the mix of humor and sadness was. The audience grew, and the ratings climbed. Soon, it became a hit. By 1977, reruns were playing in the afternoons and late at night. In 1979, it was on TV in 150 cities and often won its time slot. The reruns were so popular that TV stations paid up to $900,000 for each episode. By 1990, MASH had made more than $400 million from reruns alone. And that's how it became classic. It ran from 1972 to 1983, lasting 11 seasons and won a lot of awards. Over its 11 seasons, it got 100 Emmy nominations and won 14. Some big wins were Alan Alda as Best Actor in 1976, Gary Berghoff as Best Supporting Actor in 1977, and Harry Morgan and Loretta Swit both winning in 1980. MASH also won Humanitas Prizes, which are given to shows that inspire people and improve their lives. It got this prize 3 times, in 1980, 1982, and 1983. Fans also gave it a lot of love. It won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Comedy 5 years in a row. It wasn't just about awards. MASH was also a hit with viewers. It was always one of the top-rated shows on TV. People kept watching because the characters felt real, and the mix of funny and emotional moments kept them hooked. The show's finale, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, aired on February 28, 1983. It was more than just a TV episode. It was an event. It lasted 2.5 hours and had everyone watching. More than 60% of homes with TVs tuned in, and 77% of all TVs that were on that night were playing MASH. That means about 105.9 million people watched the episode from start to finish, and over 121.6 million people saw at least part of it. These numbers were huge. No other show had ever been watched by so many people, and the only thing that has beaten it since is the Super Bowl. But it also raised questions about why the show ended, even though people still loved it and the ratings were strong. The problem wasn't the audience, it was the writers. They had run out of new ideas. After so many episodes, it became hard to think of fresh stories that hadn't already been done before. By the time the show hit its 251st episode, it felt like they had told every story possible in that setting. During the 10th season, the writers sat down for a week to come up with new ideas. But when they looked at what they'd written, they realized most of the ideas were just repeats of things they'd already done. It was a huge wake-up call. Even Larry Gelbart, who created the show but left after season 4, later said he was amazed the show lasted as long as it did because of how limited the setting was. The show took place during the Korean War, so the writers couldn't talk about anything that happened after 1953. Things like the Vietnam War or civil rights movement were off-limits because they didn't fit the time period. By the later seasons, the writers started experimenting with different styles to keep the show interesting. For example, one episode, Dreams, was about the characters' nightmares, which was very different from the usual storytelling. Another episode, Point of View, showed everything from a patient's perspective. These episodes were creative, but they also showed how hard the writers were working to come up with something new. One funny and surprising thing that happened was that real Korean War veterans would write to the producers with story ideas. These veterans thought their experiences were unique, but most of the time, the producers had to tell them those stories had already been used. For example, one veteran told them about saving someone's life by using a pen casing to do an emergency surgery. The The producers had to let him know they had already shown that exact scenario in an earlier episode. By the final season, the writers had received over 300 ideas from veterans that they couldn't use because they'd already been covered. The biggest problem was that MASH was based on a war that lasted 3 years, but the show went on for 11 years. It made the timeline feel confusing, and the writers had to figure out ways to make it work. Sometimes it felt strange, but it also kept people interested. The biggest problem came in the later seasons. The last 7 seasons of the show all happened in less than 1 year of the war. That's hard to believe because the characters changed so much during that time, but the war itself just kept dragging on. It made things feel a little unreal, like time was stretched in a strange way. Some episodes made the timeline problems really obvious. In Season 4, there's an episode called Welcome to Korea, where they say it's September 1952. That's less than a year before the real war ended. But after that, the show went on for 7 more seasons, which doesn't match up at all. Another example is in Season 9, with an episode called A War for All Seasons. This one shows events from the whole year of 1951, but it doesn't make sense with the earlier timeline. Characters who should have been there, like Trapper and Henry Blake, aren't in the episode. Instead, Colonel Potter is already in charge, even though he wasn't supposed to arrive until later. It's like the story forgot what had already happened. Even what the characters said sometimes made the timeline confusing. In Season 7, B.J. Honeycutt mentions he's been in Korea for 9 months. If that's true, it would mean the episode takes place just a few months before the war ends. But then, the show keeps going for 4 more seasons, which makes no sense. Alan Alda was also a big reason MASH came to an end. He got the first script for the show while filming a movie in an Iowa prison. As the show went on for 11 seasons, Alda became more involved behind the scenes. He directed over 30 episodes and helped write many of them. By the 10th season, he felt the show was starting to repeat itself. He didn't want it to go downhill. Alda said he wanted to end the show while it was still great. Ratings weren't the problem. The show was still one of the most popular on TV. He just cared about keeping it fresh and meaningful. Alda also thought it was strange that MASH lasted longer than the Korean War itself. During the 10th season, CBS wanted to keep it going, but Alda pushed hard to make the 11th season the last. The show's producer, Burt Metcalf, said Alda was the one who really led the effort to end it. Other main actors agreed with him.
Alan, the change was gradual because, as I had said, as Alan didn't want to have the show be a kind of typical military comedy, and nor did we. So was he concerned about
Loretta Swit, who played Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan, and Mike Farrell, who played B.J. Honeycutt, also felt it was time to stop. Swit had worked hard to make her character deeper and more real, moving away from her early Hot Lips image. By the last season, she felt her character's story was complete. The cast knew ending the show while it was still good was the best choice. Harry Morgan, who joined the show later as Colonel Potter, also noticed the show was running out of ideas. By Season 9, he said, cracks were starting to show. This didn't mean the show was bad, but it was harder to come up with new stories. This showed how much the show had already covered. Morgan, who had been in many TV shows before, knew it was better to end strong than to drag on and lose what made it special. Then there was another main problem. MASH started as a funny, light-hearted show. In the early days, it focused on jokes and silly moments. For example, in one episode, Hawkeye made up a fake captain named Tuttle to sneak supplies to orphans. People loved the humor and the fun, and it became very popular. But things started to change as the seasons went on. The show began telling deeper, more emotional stories. One big moment came in Season 3, when a character everyone loved, Colonel Henry Blake, was sent home. But instead of a happy ending, viewers learned he died in a plane crash. It shocked everyone and showed the show was willing to be serious. By the middle seasons, the mix of comedy and drama became more obvious. An episode called Dear Sigmund in Season 5 talked about how war affected people's minds. It was still funny sometimes, but the tone was heavier. Things changed even more when some of the original writers, like Larry Gelbart, left. They were the ones who made the early seasons so funny. After they were gone, Alan Alda and Burt Metcalf, who were more focused on drama, took over.
Oh, come on, Pierce, can the tomfoolery.
In hut! Prepare for inspection! Ladies and gentlemen, General Lyle Duncombe! Thank you, Cato! Where are the girls? Where are the girls? You want girls? You want girls? You! Suck in that gut! Roll out that chest! You stay just the way you are. Let's have a major skirmish. Play this comic opera elsewhere. Comic opera? We are busy here. Shall I have him shot, Mon General? Shooting is too good for him. Lock him in the kitchen.
That's it. Get out. Get out of here.
Cato, sound retreat. Out! I shall not return.
By Season 8, the stories became much more about the characters and less about jokes. Some fans liked this deeper approach, but others missed the fun and silly side of the show. At the same time, the show had to deal with changing tastes. When it started in the 1970s, people loved its mix of comedy and anti-war ideas. But by the 1980s, audiences wanted something fresh and modern. Shows like Taxi and Cheers felt more real and relatable, while MASH seemed stuck in the past because it was about a war from the 1950s. Younger viewers didn't feel connected to it, and older fans sometimes moved on to other shows. The creators tried to keep things fresh by adding new characters, like Dr. Charles Winchester in Season 6. While he was a good addition, fans of the original cast often didn't feel the same connection to the new faces. The hardest part for the creators was balancing funny and serious moments. The show had always done both, but in the later seasons, it leaned more toward drama. For example, an episode called Lifetime in Season 8 was about saving a soldier's life in real time. It had a few light moments, but mostly it was tense and emotional. Some fans thought the show was getting too heavy, while others felt the humor didn't fit with the serious stories anymore. Episodes like Dreams, where characters had strange nightmares about their fears, pushed the limits of what people expected. Some viewers loved it, but others felt it was too much. By the end of the series, the stories dealt with big, complicated ideas, like propaganda and cultural differences. These topics were meaningful, but could feel heavy compared to the fun, easygoing episodes in the early seasons. The show sometimes struggled to keep a good balance between comedy and drama. Alan Alda, who acted in and helped create the show, said it was hard to make war funny, but still meaningful. You could feel that struggle in some episodes. They tried to do both, but it didn't always work perfectly. Apart from that, the production of MASH was incredibly tough on everyone involved. The cast and crew of MASH had to work long, exhausting hours. They often worked 14 to 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. As the seasons went on, this grueling schedule started to wear everyone down. By the 10th season in 1982, the pressure was too much for many people. One night, during the filming of the episode Heroes, Jamie Farr, who played Corporal Klinger, collapsed from exhaustion. He had been working for 19 hours straight, with only a short 30-minute break. This was a serious moment that made everyone realize how bad things had gotten. The incident led to an urgent meeting where the cast, producers, and network executives discussed how to make the work environment better. The tight schedule didn't just exhaust people, it also affected the show's quality. Writers had to rush to finish scripts, sometimes in just 3 days. Because of this, some episodes didn't turn out well. For example, the episode Dreams from 1980 was criticized for feeling messy and hard to follow. It showed how the stress of production was taking a toll on the show. At the same time, Alan Alda was becoming more involved in shaping the show. His ideas brought fresh and creative storytelling to the show, but not everyone was happy about it. In one big argument during 1979, Alda decided to rewrite an entire script just 2 days before filming. This caused chaos for the production team and made the episode much more expensive to produce. Some of the cast and crew were frustrated, and the tension between Alda and the producers became clear. Alda also liked to take risks with the stories. In one episode called Lifetime, he had the idea to show a clock ticking on screen in real time. Critics praised it for being creative, but the network worried it might confuse viewers. By 1981, Alda was helping write most of the episodes, which upset some of the original writers. One of them even called the show the Alan Alda Hour in frustration.
Well, we all knew about it. I mean, except at one point Larry asked us if we'd like to go down and talk at a press conference. I think it was at the end of the first or second year, because the networks were starting to do something called, under pressure from Congress, starting to do something called the Family Hour. And this was, I think from 8 to 9, you were only supposed to have family-oriented shows. And you could only say and do certain things. And we were objecting to this because it was, in fact, censorship.
Alda also changed the way his character, Hawkeye, was portrayed. He wanted Hawkeye to show deeper emotions and deal with serious struggles, like PTSD. This was very different from the funny and carefree Hawkeye viewers were used to. Some fans loved this change, while others found it hard to connect with the character. Meanwhile, the constant changes in the cast of MASH brought new energy to the show, but also caused challenges. Each time someone left or joined, the show's tone and relationships shifted. Some changes were necessary to keep the series fresh, but they also created tension on set and affected how the story was written. One big moment came on March 18, 1975, when McLean Stevenson and Wayne Rogers both left the show. This created a huge problem for the writers, who had to quickly introduce new characters. They brought in Colonel Potter, played by Harry Morgan, and B.J. Honeycutt, played by Mike Farrell. But the transition wasn't easy. During the filming of the episode Welcome to Korea in September 1975, Alan Alda and Mike Farrell argued over their characters, which delayed production. Another big change happened when Larry Linville left in 1977 after the 5th season. He was replaced by David Ogden Stiers as Major Charles Winchester. Winchester was very different from Frank Burns, and this affected Margaret Houlihan's character. She started to grow beyond her hot lips persona. In a 2018 interview, Loretta Swit, who played Margaret, said she had to fight for this change because the writers wanted to keep her as Frank's sidekick. One of the most emotional departures was Gary Berghoff leaving in 1979. His exit happened slowly, as he appeared in only part of the 7th season before leaving completely in the 8th. His farewell episodes, Goodbye Radar, aired in October 1979, but behind the scenes, things were tense. Berghoff had personal struggles and often showed up late or forgot his lines. This frustrated the cast, especially Alan Alda, who directed the episodes. At one point, production had to stop for an entire day because Berghoff didn't show up for a key scene. The revolving cast also made it harder for writers to keep character arcs consistent. By the 9th season in 1980, some episodes felt forced. For example, in Oh, How We Danced in 1982, the attempt to blend new characters into the show's history didn't feel authentic to longtime fans. Despite the struggles, new cast members brought fresh ideas. Kelly Nakahara, who played Nurse Kelly, joined in the fourth season in 1974 and added diversity to the show. Her character allowed the writers to explore Asian American experiences during the Korean War. Jamie Farr also became a regular in the fourth season, giving the show more depth by exploring his Lebanese American background. The demands of making MASH also took a heavy toll on the personal lives of the cast. Alan Alda, who had a lot of creative control, missed important family moments. In his 2017 memoir, Alda revealed that he missed his grandson's birth in 1980 because he was filming an episode. This caused tension with his family. Alda's wife, Arlene, only visited the set once in 11 years and was overwhelmed by how chaotic it was. Loretta Swit also struggled to balance her personal life with the show. She postponed her wedding 3 times because of filming schedules. When she finally got married in 1983, it was rushed and happened during a short break from work. The constant delays contributed to her marriage ending in 1995. The stress of the show affected health, too. Harry Morgan was diagnosed with stress-related hypertension in 1979 and had to take a 2-week break. This caused the writers to rush rewrites, and the affected episode received poor ratings. Mike Farrell faced tragedy when his father died in 1980. He wasn't allowed to leave filming to attend the funeral until Alan Alda stepped in to support him. Gary Berghoff also missed opportunities because of the show. In 1975, he had to turn down a Broadway role because of his MASH commitments. This decision bothered him and influenced his choice to leave the show in 1979. Even the crew felt the strain. Set designer Sid Dutton had a nervous breakdown in 1982 because of the intense workload. His breakdown caused a 2-day production halt and forced the producers to rethink working conditions. By the time the final season aired in 1982 to 1983, the cast and crew were exhausted. David Ogden Stiers famously said, "We're not living our lives anymore, we're acting them." This sentiment captured how everyone felt and helped the cast decide to end the show after 11 seasons. By 1982, after 10 amazing seasons, some of the cast of MASH, like Alan Alda, wanted to move on. But CBS didn't want the show to end because it was still a huge hit and made them lots of money. On May 28, 1982, CBS President B. Donald Grant flew to Los Angeles to meet the cast and producers at a hotel. For 6 hours, he explained how the show was still their top comedy, with incredible ratings. He also said it made about $900,000 per episode, which was a fortune at the time. Grant didn't just talk about money. He brought letters from fans begging for more episodes, and even had Korean War veterans tell the cast how the show helped them deal with their own memories of the war. He told them they had a responsibility to their fans and couldn't just leave. After that, CBS kept working hard to convince the cast, especially Alan Alda. They promised him he could write and direct more episodes. By mid-August 1982, the cast finally agreed to do another season, but they had conditions. Figuring out the final season wasn't easy. On September 3, 1982, everyone, CBS, the studio, and the cast, met to make a plan. The cast, led by Alan Alda, wanted only 13 episodes because they were tired and wanted to end the show properly. CBS wanted 24 episodes to please advertisers. Things got so tense that Alda threatened to quit. For 2 days, everyone scrambled to fix the situation. Finally, they made a deal. There would be 16 episodes, ending with a long special finale. This gave the cast less work but gave CBS a big event to promote. The cast also got big pay raises. Alan Alda became the highest-paid actor on TV, making $275,000 per episode. The deal also said the final episode had to air by March 1st, 1983, so the actors could move on. The last season had to balance what CBS wanted with what the cast and writers thought was right. CBS wanted the finale to include a laugh track, like most episodes, but Alan Alda and the producers hated the idea. They said it would ruin the serious tone of the story. After a long meeting, CBS agreed not to use a laugh track, though they could add one for reruns later, but they never did. There were also arguments about the story. CBS didn't like a scene where Hawkeye has a breakdown after seeing a Korean mother smother her baby to keep it quiet. Alda refused to cut it, and even said he wouldn't promote the show if CBS interfered. In the end, CBS let it stay. They also wanted a happy ending where the characters meet up years later, but the writers said no. Instead, they ended the show with Hawkeye flying away in a helicopter and seeing "goodbye" spelled out in rocks below. It was simple, emotional, and perfect for the story.